Hey y'all, it's Ashley with What's Up Under That. If you guys hear the wind, the leaves, and my son screaming in the background in cars, it's because we are on a walk. So this just randomly came to me after a conversation that it was that I had with someone, and I was talking to them and they were like, I thought something happened to somebody. And I'm just like, wait, what do you mean? And I'm like, aren't you driving? And they were just like, yeah, but I couldn't get to the text message. So I thought that something happened. I said, why are you basing something happening off of the fact that you couldn't get to the text message when you aren't supposed to even be worried about a text message because you're driving? And after that, this person stated, that's me, that's just how, they stated, that's me, that's just how I am. And I'm not sure, if you guys have someone in your life that does this, or maybe that's even you. But something that a lot of people have had to tell me, because I myself deal with overthinking, and it really made me think how, there will be certain stories that we tell ourselves with no logic and no proof, and we feel that it's law. Now, since I'm already talking with you guys about this, I want to share something. I was in a Zoom meeting yesterday, and there were some notes that I took. So in the Zoom meeting, there's this lady. She's a cognitive behavioral therapist. She helps people who deal with overthinking and things like that, and to help them reframe their mindset. So these were the questions that she said that you have to ask yourself when you're overthinking. When you have a moment to take a step and pause and ask yourself, what is it that I am thinking in this moment? And then, ask yourself, do I want to be thinking these things, or is it, almost more so a assumption, or is it like a repetitive cycle, if you deal with overthinking? And then the next question to ask yourself is, based on whatever situation is, ask, what if it all works out? What if it works out? Generally, when we put ourselves in the space of overthinking, it's something that we feel is out of our control. So it's like, say, you have an event that's coming up and you're thinking, oh no, everything is falling apart, nothing is going to work out. And then you ask yourself, leave that alone. You ask yourself, do I want to have this thought process that everything is just going to be terrible and nothing's going to work out, nothing's going to go as planned? And then after that, you take that opportunity to shift your mindset and you ask, well, what if this works out? What if, even if things do fall apart, what if they still end up working out? And then the next thing that she brought up was telling yourself, so what? If it doesn't work out, so what? And the way that she explained it was, doing this and saying this allows you to be able to release that feeling, release that emotion from your body that you are holding, because that is an emotion that it is you're holding, and it's affecting and it's disrupting your nervous system. And then the next thing she said, what my brain heard it is what story am I telling myself? But what she said is, what am I making it mean? So in this specific situation, are you making something mean something that it is not? And I presented an example. She says, so say the situation is, this is the old way of thinking. The first example, I'm going to preface it with that. This is the old way of thinking. Situation is you lost your job. The thought is, how am I going to pay my bills? The action that follows that is, you have a mental breakdown and now you're having to stay at home. And the result is that you're not going to be working. Now, that is like the old thought process. Now, say this is the new thought process. The situation is you lost your job. But instead, of thinking like, how am I going to putting yourself in that loop of how am I going to pay my bills? The thought is, maybe that job wasn't meant for me and something better is going to come along. And from there, it brings you to the action. The action is now, you're able to build your resume. You're able to meet new people and different things of that matter. And now the result of that is now you have 3 interviews. So that really goes in and it allows you to see in what ways you can change your thought process. Now, I know, like with me, I'm like one of those type of people when it comes to understanding situations, sometimes having tools available helps me to make the situation make a lot more sense. And this was also something that I was talking to a friend about. She was just like, I was telling her something and it was like, in my head it made sense. And when I told her, I was like, I'm afraid of X, Y, and Z. And she said, why? And I said, because there have been times in the past when something happens to somebody else, it always happens to me. And she said, okay, well, maybe that was just a coincidence. And, she's also spiritual. She's spiritually gifted and all those things. So she doesn't have any issues separating, what may be a sign and what's logic. And she was like, so maybe those times it was just a coincidence. Or she said, maybe that is something. She said, maybe you could call your power back and tell yourself that was something that I attracted. Because you feel this situation is going to happen. This is something that's always going to happen. And I was like, you know what? Damn, you got a point. And then this also, it brings me to when I was in high school, they had started this new thing. It was called Late Start Wednesdays, where school didn't start when it usually did. Of course, operative word, late start. And, during that time, something always happened to me on Wednesdays. And it went from, something always happened to my new thought process was I loved every day of the week except Wednesdays. And I automatically, before Wednesday could even come, I was dreading it. Before Wednesday could even come, I was automatically assuming that something negative was going to happen because I'm like, oh, well, it always happens. So I guess that means that it's going to keep happening. And, that would be a perfect example to insert those questions. What am I thinking? I'm thinking because something bad has always happened to me on Wednesdays, it's always going to happen. And then asking, do I want to have this thought process? Like, do I want to dread every Wednesday being horrible or dread every Wednesday something happening? And then, the question, what if it works out? What if I happen to have an amazing Wednesday? Does that change the trajectory of my thought process? Does that allow me to shift my perspective and think, what? Maybe that was just something happening, even with me being into spirituality, it could have been something aligned in the stars, just like how stuff happens with Mercury in retrograde. What if it was just something happening at that time? And that does not necessarily mean this is how every single Wednesday is going to go. And then the next question, so what? So what if I have a shitty day? So what if that happens? The thing about it is, even after the times that I repetitively had shitty Wednesdays, I still ended up being okay. I still ended up surviving the day. I still was able to go home and decompress and find something to make my day more enjoyable. Because that was the thing. The shitty Wednesdays were only, and this is another thing to really think about, the shitty Wednesdays were only at school. Like, that's literally it. The shitty Wednesdays only happened in school. It didn't happen at home. It didn't happen at the grocery store. It didn't happen at a family member's house. It was strictly just shitty Wednesdays at school. You know, this 8-hour time slot at school. And now that goes into the last question. What story am I telling myself, or what am I making it mean? And it's, I'm making a situation mean something that it doesn't even have to. And when I was sitting there, I was taking those notes. I said, you know, this is like the second or third person that had told me this in like a different, this is what more broken down format. But I'm just like, I feel like this might be the next big thing. This might be the next big thing to really helping me break this cycle of overthinking, making me break these patterns of overthinking. Now, after all of those things, I'm going to read you guys to some of the, I'm going to read you some of the quotes that I took down from the conversations that were taking place. The first thing was, you have autonomy over your life. And, you know, there's been a lot of confusion on TikTok about anatomy and autonomy. You know, anatomy is the build and the make of your body. Autonomy is, you know, you having precedence over a certain thing. So you have precedence over your life. And a lot of times there are situations where we give certain situations and certain things way too much power that don't allow us to operate in the way that we want to. It doesn't allow us any room for bliss. It doesn't leave any room for happiness. It doesn't leave any room for joy. It doesn't leave any room for what if this situation turns out better than I expected, or, you know, just anything like that. And of course, you know, this is different with every situation. There are some situations where there won't be anything that you can do. You know, you may have to wait it out. This may be just what life is. Now you have to figure out how to navigate life with these new things or these new changes. The next one, this one really hit me hard. They said, it is a journey. Every tool you acquire may need to be sharpened. And this really made me think about, you know, us as people with ADHD, how we have that tendency to constantly go from project to project to project to project. And it's because of, you know, that dopamine is gone. That thrill from starting something new is gone. But it's just kind of like, even for those that don't have ADHD, that deal with constantly having these new hobbies come up, it's like, when are you going to be able to say, this is something that I completed? You know, this is something that it is that I was able to finish before you go ahead and move on to the next project. And that's for me, is something that I've been personally working on. But just even too, as far as like, you know, the tools with the list of questions that I used, or the STAR prompt, you know, the situation, thought, action, and result. Somebody uses it one time and they said, oh, it doesn't work. And it's like, maybe in that instance, it's not so much the tool that needs to be sharpened. Maybe it's your mind. You know, your mind is also just as equally a tool. You have to sharpen your mind in order to really make sense of the tools that it is that you have available. You know, and I just got a download as I was saying that, because I know and I accept that everybody does not have access to, medications or supplements or healthcare, or everybody does not have that knowledge to really understand their body. But just like, even for me, this as far as even specifically people that deal with ADHD, I noticed from like being in Reddit groups and just different groups like that, my ADHD, don't get me wrong, like this shit isn't like, it's like I would give this shit 4 stars, but I feel like there are some people that may be worse off than me. And that's not saying that in a judgmental or a critical way. It's just being honest. And I say that too because, and I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, where there were people on Reddit and just, people aren't able to keep jobs. People are balls deep in credit card debt. People can't keep together or maintain relationships because of how bad their ADHD is. And, I think to myself, like, I don't really have those issues. Of course, we all lose people that serve their purpose or their season in our lives. But I don't strictly feel like, every relationship that I've lost was solely me. I don't feel like the credit card debt or any debts I've acquired was because of my ADHD. It was because of the lack of financial literacy, or my ability to keep jobs was never because I was a shitty employee. Because if anything, I was a fucking amazing. I was an overachiever when it came to me being an employee. But jobs want to work you to the fucking gristle, to the white meat, and barely want to pay you any money. And I wasn't with that shit. So I said, fuck it. And I started working for myself. But with all of those things, I feel like the primary reason why my ADHD is not as bad as most people's is because of the awareness I have of my body, the knowledge that I have with herbs, and just the biggest thing is me knowing and understanding my body the way that it is that I do. But something else too that I recently noticed, I've been taking my probiotics again more consistently. The incentive for me here with taking my probiotics consistently is I have a gluten allergy. If I do not take these probiotics, I can't eat fucking bagels. And it's already, I don't eat cereal anymore. I don't eat oatmeal because I don't mess with regular animals' milk. So I'm like, okay, bagels is the only fucking option that it is that I'm having right now outside of fruit. And one of the things that I've noticed is ever since I've been taking my probiotics consistently, I haven't been having my brain fog. I won't say I don't have it. It's decreased tremendously, but I haven't been dealing with brain fog. I haven't been dealing with, excess fatigue. My anxiety has not been the way that it usually is. Just even as far as like depression, I'm not in this constant cycle of like doom and gloom. I've been able to keep up with my laundry a lot more, and that was something that I've struggled with for God knows how long. Like I would go, and it doesn't help too when you have a lot of clothes available. I would go like 2.5 months without doing laundry, and I'd be like, look, girl, you need to tackle this. It's getting out of hand. You got to take care of this shit. So just even with that, like all of these things that I've noticed, and that's why I said, like, as far as like the mind and being able to sharpen the mind, I know that that's not necessarily something that everybody is able to do, but there's tools and there's resources to possibly be able to do it in order to sharpen your mind. Because I know too, a lot of people with ADHD, just the way that they process situations is because of the depression. It's because of the anxiety, or it's because of depression and anxiety inhibiting them from being able to break these repetitive. It's from being able. It's from them not being able to break these repetitive thought processes. And mind you, a lot of these things were either thought processes that I've had since growing up, or, things that I've acquired on my own, or just not having those thought processes available to me. Like, somebody told me these things repetitively, because, whether it's children or whether it's an adult, we learn things through repetition. There is no way around it. Now, as to how we learn it, whether it be auditory, visual, kinesthetic, all those things, that's subjective with each person. Now, next. The next thing that came up was naming your anxiety. Now, the girl was like, this may sound crazy, this may sound weird, but naming it. And she said the reason that it is exactly the reason that you want to give your anxiety a name is so that when you have those moments when a thought comes up and it tries to tell you something that's not true, you can be like say an example, say I name my anxiety Lisa, and I hear a thought in my head, and it's like, to me, the thought just sounds absolutely asinine. The shit sounds fucking ridiculous. And I'm just like, Lisa, girl, really? And it's like, in that moment, you're stopping that thought process because you're just kind of like, where's the logic in that? And this was also something I learned in the meditation that I did. In the meditation, the guy would say, if instead of, being aggressive to yourself, because like, oh my God, I'm in the meditation and I'm still thinking, say to yourself, okay, thank you. And it's the same way, address your thoughts the same way you would a person. Say you're having an amazing day and somebody comes up and starts talking to you and saying some wild ass shit. What exactly would you tell that person in that moment to get them to leave you the fuck alone and keep going about their day? And it's the same way with your thoughts, but being gentle about it. Don't be like, look, you bald-headed ass bitch. Don't do it on off the wall shit, because this is still your like your subconscious and all those things. So be generally be like, okay, like just leave this shit at that. And then with doing that, asking yourself, is this even true? And when you stop and you got to think and you realize like it's not even true. It's literally just something that it is that I made up in my mind. Oh, wow, the voice recording paused. Anyways, back to what I was saying. But like I said, asking yourself, is this really true? Now, the next thing they said was the pattern is a result of something. So things to ask yourself, how long have you been having these thoughts, and how can you change the thought? So going back to what I was telling you guys with the late start Wednesdays, how long did I have those thoughts? I had those thoughts a good chunk of the fucking school year. That shit's crazy. Now, when I say that now, looking back at it, it's like, girl, Wednesdays were literally only shitty when you were in school. But now the whole, how can you change this thought? What new story can you tell yourself? What is a new narrative that you can create? And that's been like a really big theme these last couple weeks is creation. It's not always about, oh, you got to go out to the store and you got to buy this and buy that. You got to make this bomb ass vision board. You got to draw, you got to paint. What is something new that you can create? Whether that is a narrative, whether that is creating a plan. What in your life can you create? What is something that you can alchemize? If you have a banana, what can you make with that? You don't gotta just make banana bread. You can make a banana split. What else can you make with bananas? You can make banana nut muffins. Like, take what it is that you have and create something from it. If your room is dirty, how can you create an environment that you feel a sense of security and stability and peace in? If you have an event that you have to go to and you don't have anything to wear, but you also know you haven't done laundry, what can you create to allow you to do the things you need? Can you create space? Like, I'm just throwing, at this point, I'm throwing shit out there. That one ain't hit like I wanted it to, but I'm just throwing things out there as far as a creation. This was another thing. One of the ladies in this community that I'm in, and she was speaking about, when you're dealing with anxiety, everything does not have to be big and huge and grandeur and all this stuff. If you know that you are scared to drive, because I know a lot of people personally that have anxiety when it comes to driving. It doesn't have to necessarily be, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to drive on the highway. Like, no, it can be simply as, I'm going to grab my keys and I'm going to stand outside. And then, the next time, and then you keep doing that. And then you're just like, I'm going to grab my keys and I'm going to go sit in the car. And then the next moment is, okay, I'm going to grab my keys and I'm going to drive around my apartment complex, or I'm going to back out and move into another parking spot. Like, doing something in tiny baby steps and rewarding yourself for them. Like, even asking yourself, how did I feel when I did that? How did that make me feel? And just keep doing that. Now, the next thing, this one really hit. It was someone in the group they were talking, and they were talking about a situation that they deal with at home. And she's like, I'm aware of it, but I can't do X, Y, and Z. And then the one thing the girl said, she said, if you're aware, you're not stuck on square one, you're on square two. And sometimes we're so focused on where we're at that we realize we're no longer at the beginning. And I know that is something that I personally deal with. Like, I can be really aware of something and not know how to move forward, not know how to do something different outside of that. I myself struggle with the awareness aspect of it. So, keeping that in mind, you may not be, and that's, it's that cliche saying. Some people may think of it as cliche. I may not be where I want to, but I'm not where I used to be. I'm trying to think, y'all, because I feel like I have an amazing example for this. I don't know. It'll come if it comes. And yeah, the last one here is, okay, back to the last thing that I was saying. Now, the last thing here is, change the thought and the action will follow. So, I'm trying to think. I'm going to use the late start thing again. Okay, what if I change my thought that maybe things aren't as bad as it seems? And next thing I know, after I've changed the thought, oh, wow, this has happened. Oh, wow, that's happened in school. And it's like, too, even looking back, outside of that, I feel like the biggest reason why, Wednesdays may have been shitty for me is just because, it was the freaking people I was around. It wasn't, not even just the people I was around. It was the fact that I did not have the help and assistance that I needed in order to succeed in those classes. But at the end of the day, I utilized my tools. Some tools that I utilized was, I would just sit by myself and I would be really observant. Another tool that I utilized was at the start of late start Wednesdays, I would listen to music. And that's also a tool that's been coming up for me again, in my adult life. Like, that's another thing I realized when I was going through those bouts of up and down depression, I wasn't listening to music as much. And that was like one of the biggest issues. Like, sis, you literally neglecting the one thing that keeps you staying afloat. So that's even another question you can ask yourself. What is something that I generally do that I no longer do anymore? And I know for some people, it's not always that simple. For you, it can be, oh, I used to paint and I don't paint anymore. I can understand when the things that make you feel good are not as simple as opening up an app. It can be discouraging, but that goes back to those steps. Okay, you know that you want to paint, but part of the thing that could be keeping you from painting is your paint brushes are dirty. Okay, so maybe one day, and I told my friend this was like a little piece of advice I gave her when she was pregnant, because it was hard for her just like standing up for long periods of time and just, dealing with ADHD while being pregnant. So I would tell her, get the things when she would have to cook dinner. I said, get the stuff you need to chop up, peel, or whatever the case is. Get a bowl, bring it to the table and sit down and cut it up. Maybe do that for yourself one day. Get a bowl of water, get some soap, rubbing alcohol, whatever people use to paint, and sit down and clean your brushes. Get a towel and lay them out so that they can dry overnight. Now the next step could be, damn, man, you got to go through your paints. You got to see what's old, what's dried up. Sit down and make a day where you can do that. Do baby steps so that it's like the more that you gradually do this, that it allows for that excitement to build up. So yeah, like I said, that's something that it is that you can get into. Now for me, now I'm gonna kind of like take a turn for this, because I know a lot of times the biggest thing we deal with is getting back into our hobbies. For me, I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but these are some hobbies that I love to do. I love cooking. I just hate the process of peeling and cutting and everything. I love to crochet. I love to draw. I love baking. I love taking pictures. And so I'll use, let me think. I'll use one that doesn't really have too much of a monetary value. So cooking. One of the biggest things sometimes that keeps me from being able to cook is the fact that the kitchen needs to be cleaned, or the idea of doing everything all at once. So one thing I recently made, and it really helped me so that I could get it all done in one day and I wasn't like just completely and utterly exhausted. I made vegetarian fajitas. So of course, first thing I had to do was clean the kitchen. I think I did that, and I broke that up in 2 days because there was a lot of stuff that needed to be moved and shifted. Clean stuff needed to be put away. Dirty stuff needed to be washed. So I did that, broke that up in 2 days. And the day that I cooked, I chopped everything up, and then I chopped everything up.
What do you say?
And after I chopped everything up, for the guacamole, I put it in the fridge and set that aside, seasoned it, allowed the seasons to really set in and marinate. And then I cut up the bell peppers and the onions. Got the rice ready so that it wasn't like I was trying to do everything at once, and then it was just something small. Another thing that I've been doing, because I love to bake, and wow, I didn't even realize this was something I was doing until I just like mentioned it right now. I started buying those like these gluten-free cookies for my son that were already prepped and ready in the box. All you had to do was like add the egg, the oil, and I think, melted butter. And that's also been helping. And just that's another thing too. I love, I wouldn't say making jewelry, but I love bejeweling. So I recently made myself a waist bead, and I made myself an anklet. I said I was going to make myself another anklet and waist bead set again soon. But just doing little things here and there. And I feel like too, what really helps, especially for people that are into a lot of projects, is it's okay to keep a bunch of projects in rotation. Just make sure that you are completing them. And the key, and I know, like with people that have ADHD, like one of the biggest things sometimes is you hyper focus on it, and if you take a break, that if you take a break, you won't be able to go back to it. For me, that is a skill that I have been having to learn to strengthen. Like, it's okay. It's okay if you want to take a break. You just have to remember to get back to it. And I think because too, I am in like this new and fresh space, getting back to things that I was doing, it's not as hard. It's not as hard as it used to be. Like when I was making my waist beads, I started that, and it's like a part of me wanted to keep going and keep going and keep going. And then I finally got to the point, I'm like, all right, girl, like you need to take a break. You got to do something, because you can't just sit up and keep working on and working on this and not taking any breaks. So that also helped, breaking the projects up, day by day. And I know a lot of times for some people, the issue isn't, that they can't get started. It's that they have writer's block. And something that my friend told me some months back, she said, maybe the reason sometimes why you're stuck is because you're so bent on something coming out the way that you want to, that you don't leave room. You don't leave room for anything different. And that was exactly, what the case was with the waist beads that I have on. I was so bent on having this exact look. And, after doing divination and all of those different things, the waist bead and anklet set turned out different than I would have ever imagined. And it wasn't even just so much that I had writer's block. It was just my unwillingness to change the direction from the path that I had intended to take. And sometimes we just have to be open to doing something different. We have to be open to doing something that we did not intend to do. And that's whether it's a hobby, whether it's a thought process, or any of those things for that matter. So, thank you guys for listening and tuning in. I really hope, you gained some additional tools. I really hope you learned something from this. And like I said in the last podcast, I really want to start, creating episodes. I really want to start really creating episodes out of notes that it is I've taken, or just having my notes more organized, because I feel like it flows. It gives me that sense of structure, but it also allows me to flow, give channel messages, or just whatever the case it is I want to do. So, yeah. I hope you guys have an amazing day, amazing weekend, and I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.